year is 1974, Shanxi Province, China. A local farmer is digging a well and strikes something hard. He thinks it's an old pot. But as he digs deeper, he realizes he is staring into the clay face of a warrior who has been waiting silently beneath the earth for over 2,000 years. This is how the world learned of the Terracotta Army. 8,000 life-size soldiers, each with a unique face, along with horses and war chariots. An army created to guard its emperor in the afterlife. We've all seen the pictures, we've all heard the story. But what if I told you that the most incredible part of this discovery isn't the warriors themselves? That the real mystery, the one that baffles modern scientists, is not what they found, but what these warriors possessed and what they are still guarding to this day. Welcome, all truth seekers, to our channel. We are here to look behind the curtain of official history and ask the most uncomfortable questions. If you're ready to have your understanding of the ancient world challenged, you've come to the right place. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to join our community and never miss an investigation that defies the reality we know. To understand the true scale of this mystery, we must first understand the man who created it. And he was not just a king or a ruler. He was a figure of almost mythical proportions. His name was Yin Zhang, but history remembers him by the title he created for himself, Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor. Imagine China before him. It was a patchwork quilt of 7 warring states, 7 armies, 7 different currencies, 7 systems of weights and measures. Even the written language differed among the states. Hundreds of years of continuous war, betrayal, and chaos. And then he arrives on the scene. In just over 10 years, in a series of swift and ruthless military campaigns, he crushes all his rivals and does what no one had ever managed to do before. He unites all the lands under a single authority. He creates what we know today as China. He was a genius reformer. He abolished the old currencies and introduced a single monetary system. He standardized the written characters so that an official from one end of the country could understand an order from the other. He introduced a single system of laws, a uniform width for chariot axles so they could travel throughout the empire. He connected the scattered defensive walls in the north into a single Great Wall of China, a project so immense that it cost the lives of, by some estimates, up to 1 million people. But he was also a ruthless tyrant. He burned books to destroy the memory of the past. He buried alive hundreds of scholars and philosophers who dared to disagree with him. He was an absolute sovereign, a god on earth in his own eyes. And this god was terrified, down to the marrow of his bones, of one thing: death. His entire life after unifying China turned into an obsessive, insane quest, the search for immortality. He surrounded himself with alchemists, sorcerers, and mystics who promised to create an elixir of eternal life for him. Many of these elixirs contained mercury, and ironically, it was likely these very attempts to achieve immortality that led to his death. He sent enormous fleets under the command of court magicians in search of the mythical islands of the immortals, Penglai, Fangzhong, and Yingzhou, which, according to legend, were located somewhere in the Eastern Sea. None of these expeditions ever returned. And while the emperor desperately sought a way to cheat death in this world, he prepared for life in the next on an even grander scale. He didn't just build a tomb for himself. That would have been too small for him. Starting at the age of 13, he began the construction of an entire underground empire, an exact replica of his world designed to function for eternity. It took nearly 40 years and the labor of 700,000 workers. Beneath a huge man-made mound, his palace was recreated. Around it were underground stables with the real remains of horses, arsenals, figures of acrobats, musicians, and officials, an entire court that was meant to serve him after death. But what empire can exist without an army? And to protect his eternal peace, Qin Shi Huang ordered the creation of an army second to none. An army that does not fear death because it is already dead. An army of clay, the Terracotta Army. And it is this very army, born of his paranoid fear, that holds technologies that make us doubt the reality of his time. For the first decades after its discovery, the world simply marveled at the scale and artistic genius. Imagine 8,000 warriors, and each one has a unique face. This isn't mass production. These are portraits of the real soldiers of the emperor's army. The armor, the hairstyles, even the patterns on the soles of their shoes, every detail was meticulously recreated. It was magnificent. But when the initial awe subsided and scientists with microscopes and spectrometers got to work, admiration began to give way to bewilderment. They began to find things that simply should not have been there. Anomalies. Technologies that were millennia ahead of their time. The first mystery literally lay in the hands of the clay soldiers, their weapons. Tens of thousands of items, long swords, spearheads, and most importantly, powerful crossbows capable of piercing any armor of that era. When archaeologists began to carefully extract these weapons from the damp soil where they had lain for 2,200 years, they were stunned. First, they were incredibly sharp, and second, they had suffered almost no corrosion. The bronze blades gleamed as if they had just been taken from the forge. How is this possible? Anyone who has ever seen ancient bronze knows that it gets covered with a thick green patina, oxidizes, and deteriorates, but not here. Scientists took samples for analysis, expecting to find some unique alloy, but what they discovered made them recheck their data again and again. The surface of the swords was coated with an extremely thin layer, 10 to 15 microns thick, of chromium oxide. This is a technology known to us today as chrome plating. It was this very layer that protected the metal from corrosion for 2 millennia. It is a process that requires complex electrochemical reactions, and this process was officially patented in Germany in 1937 and in the US in 1950. How, tell me, could craftsmen at the court of Qin Shi Huang in 210 BC possess a technology that our advanced civilization could only replicate and patent during World War II? This was the first, but by no means the last question that science has no answer for. The next anomaly was related to color. Originally, all the warriors were brightly painted, but the paint quickly faded and flaked off on contact with the air. Scientists rushed to save what was left, and their attention was drawn to one particular pigment, an incredibly rich, deep purple color that was unlike any known natural dye. It was named Han purple. Chemical analysis showed that it was a complex compound, barium copper silicate. Such a substance simply doesn't exist in nature. It can only be created artificially. This requires mixing several minerals in precise proportions and heating them to a temperature between 850 and 1,000 degrees Celsius. The slightest error in the composition or a fluctuation in temperature, and instead of a vibrant purple pigment, you just get a piece of useless black glass. This was complex inorganic chemistry that required not just knowledge, but also precise control over the production process. But the most incredible part began when this ancient pigment fell into the hands of modern theoretical physicists. In 2006, scientists from Stanford and Brookhaven National Laboratory decided to study its magnetic properties. They cooled a sample of Han purple to near absolute zero and placed it in a super powerful magnetic field. And what they saw was like something out of science fiction. The material entered a state known as a quantum critical point, and its three-dimensional structure collapsed. The atoms within it began to behave as if they existed in only 2 dimensions, not 3. This is a property that is now being actively studied for the development of topological quantum computers, a technology of the future. Let's review. Craftsmen of the 3rd century BC created a substance that does not occur in nature, requires laboratory precision to produce, and which, as it turns out, has unique quantum properties that could help in the creation of next-generation computers. How could they have done this? Was it just an incredible random coincidence, or did they possess knowledge of chemistry and material science that we are only now beginning to comprehend? Chrome-plated swords, quantum paints. The Terracotta Army was slowly ceasing to be just a work of ancient art. It was becoming a warehouse of out-of-place artifacts, technologies that appeared out of their time. But all of this, as it turned out, was just a prelude. These were merely the soldiers' secrets, and the main secret they guard still lies untouched beneath the earth. Look at the army. All 8,000 warriors lined up in battle formation face strictly to the east. They are not just statues, they are an eternal garrison, the first line of defense, and they are guarding something much more important. The gaze of every warrior, every spear tip, is directed to protect the central object of the entire burial complex. A huge man-made mound resembling a truncated pyramid, over 50 meters high, the mausoleum of Emperor Qin Shi Huang himself. And this mound has never been opened. Think about it. The greatest archaeological find on the planet, potentially containing untold treasures and historical artifacts that could rewrite history, and no one dares to touch it. Why? The answer is simple, because we are afraid. And our fear is not a superstitious dread of Pharaoh's curses. It is a cold, rational fear based on 2 sources, the testimony of an ancient historian and the data of modern science. The historian's name was Sima Qian. He wrote his Records of the Grand Historian just 100 years after the emperor's death, when memories of the grand construction were still fresh. And he left us a frighteningly detailed description of what lies inside this mound. He wrote, and I quote, "Copies of palaces and towers were built for the emperor, and figures of hundreds of officials were placed. The tomb was filled with the rarest artifacts and wonderful treasures. Craftsmen were ordered to make crossbows and arrows primed to shoot automatically at anyone who tries to enter. The great rivers of China, the Yangtze and the Yellow River, were reproduced with liquid mercury, and a mechanism made this mercury flow continuously. The ceiling was decorated with the heavenly constellations, and on the floor, a complete map of the land. Mechanical crossbows that have been waiting for an intruder for 2,200 years? Entire rivers and lakes of poisonous liquid mercury flowing in a circle? For a long time, historians considered this just a beautiful legend, a metaphor, an attempt to exaggerate the emperor's greatness, just a fairy tale. Until, in the 1980s, a group of scientists decided to test this legend. They didn't dig. They took hundreds of soil samples from all around the perimeter of the mound at various depths, and what they found made the scientific community shudder. The results showed an abnormally high concentration of mercury in the soil, hundreds of times above the normal level. But that wasn't the most startling part. When the scientists plotted the points with the highest concentration on a map, they formed a clear outline. This outline perfectly matched the course of the main rivers on a map of China, which were meant to surround the emperor's capital, recreated in the center of the tomb. The legend was true. Sima Qian was not lying. Somewhere down there, deep beneath our feet, in a sealed underground palace, real, poisonous rivers of hundreds of tons of liquid mercury are indeed flowing in a circle. And this is precisely why the Chinese government and the global scientific community have placed a moratorium on opening it. First, it is deadly. Opening it could release toxic mercury vapors that would poison the soil and groundwater for many kilometers around. Second, we are simply not technologically ready. Imagine what's inside: ancient silks, painted fans, bamboo scrolls with lost texts, paper. Upon sudden contact with the oxygen and humidity of our world, all these priceless organic artifacts could turn to dust in seconds. We saw this happen with the paints on the terracotta warriors. To open the tomb today would be to destroy its contents forever for the sake of mere curiosity. We are waiting for science to advance to a level that might allow us, perhaps with robots or nanotechnology, to look inside without destroying this fragile time capsule. And until that day comes, the Emperor's greatest secret remains securely protected. So what do we have? An underground army with weapons coated in 20th century chrome, painted with a substance that has quantum properties. And this army guards a sealed palace filled with mechanical traps and poisonous rivers of mercury that mimic a map of the entire country. What does this tell us about Emperor Qin Shi Huang? Was he just a powerful and cruel ruler? Or did he have access to knowledge that was millennia ahead of his time? Where did he get these technologies? Were they the legacy of an even ancient, forgotten civilization? Or, as some believe, was he aided by advisors not of this world who provided him with the recipes for eternal protection? The Terracotta Army is not just a monument, it is a challenge to our understanding of history. And as long as the main mound remains sealed, the greatest archaeological mystery on planet Earth remains unsolved. We see only the guardians at the gate. What or who they are actually protecting, we have yet to find out. What do you think? What is hidden in the center of the Mercury rivers? The lost technology of the ancients, or something else entirely? Share your theory in the comments. And if this investigation made you think, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, because the biggest mysteries are still ahead. Thanks for watching.